All right, and welcome to Memorial's first ever, the Monarch Experience. Thank you so much for sitting in and listening to us today. This is going to be such an incredible experience for you listening. We are looking at giving students the platform to be able to voice their own opinions about what matters to them. And that's what this is all about. We're trying to make sure that you, the student body, have the opportunity and the ability to hear as well as talk about things that are pertinent towards you. And today, for our very first episode, we're going to be addressing something. I don't know if we're actually going to get a second episode because it's a little bit controversial. We're going to be actually talking about standardized testing and common assessments in general. No, don't worry, or unfortunately, there won't be answers being given, so we won't be able to help you out like that. But we are going to be talking about the general idea of what standardized testing does. Is it good? Is it beneficial? Is there a purpose for it? And what is that purpose? But before we experience today's episode, I have to be able to make sure I give a major shout out to some incredible people who have gone out of their way to help make this a possibility. Number one has to go out to our incredible administration for giving us the tools, these incredible microphones that you're hearing us through, and being able to give us the platform to make this actually happen. Number two, major shout out has to go to Mr. Fine. A couple of weeks ago, I came to Mr. Fine with the crumbs of an idea, as he called it, and he helped me make this thing, turn this thing into what it hopefully is and will become in the future. Wouldn't have been able to do this without you, Mr. Fine. Thank you so much for allowing me to bounce ideas off of you. And finally, and last and certainly never least, our incredible logo, we have to give a major shout out to Chloe, one of my fantastic students who took the time out of her day and her busy schedule to come up with that awesome logo that you probably clicked on in order to get into this podcast today. So let's get right to it. First up in 6th grade, we have Sammi. Sammi, say hi.
Hi.
In 7th grade, we have Madison. Madison, say hi.
Hi, everybody.
And in 8th grade, we have Victoria. Victoria, say bye.
Goodbye.
Thanks for listening. That was a great episode.
That's the end.
So how are you guys doing today?
I'm doing
Great.
good.
Yeah.
Awesome. We're so excited that you're here with us. And I don't know who this we is, but I am so excited that you're here with us. But first, before we get into anything, we have to know there are questions that the student body, they have been dying to know.
Ooh.
Yeah. So we're going to go there. Victoria,
Yes.
crunchy or creamy peanut butter?
Who in their right mind chooses crunchy?
Everybody.
Every-
It's crunchy.
What's wrong with you?
Just the crunches. It's nothing without
No,
the crunches.
If I wanted to eat peanuts, then I would eat peanuts. I don't want to be eating my peanut butter and jelly sandwich and then just bite into something hard and just ugh.
It's good.
No.
If I would just have a jelly sandwich, if it was jelly or creamy peanut butter and jelly, then I would just have jelly.
There's no juxtaposition between the textures. It's all the same.
No, but then you
You
get the
need the
salty and the
crunch.
sweet.
Jelly's better than both of them.
Wow. That is just, wow.
That's a hot take.
Hot take right there. We need a hot take button for this. Well, I think we just alienated half of our listeners. Right now we're a third of the school, which is awesome. Sammi, you are off to a magnificent start. Well, Sammi, we're going to throw this right at you then. When you eat cereal, do you put the cereal in the bowl first?
Oh, God.
And then the milk? Victoria's already offended. Or do you put the milk in first and then the cereal?
I put the cereal in and then the milk.
Okay,
Yeah, because that's
yes,
all any
yes,
logical,
yes.
sane person would do.
Yeah,
Good.
it would splash.
But there would be splashes everywhere.
What type of psychopath puts their milk before their cereal?
Probably the type of psychopath that eats creamy peanut
Yeah,
butter.
Or, you know what?
And Madison, there have been rumblings in the 7th grade hallway.
Really?
Yeah, rumor, innuendo, all these kind of crazy things that people were saying. And we got to get to the bottom of this. When you put on your shoes,
Okay.
do you put on shoe, tie, tie? Or do you put on shoe, tie the laces, shoe, tie the laces?
Shoe tie the laces, shoe tie the laces.
Whoa.
What?
Are you serious? Then you have
No,
you're
I thought
already
shoes-
halfway there.
Well, you're halfway there either way.
No,
Yeah.
but you're quicker halfway there.
A quicker halfway.
And it's
No,
variety.
that's
It adds
not true.
variety to your cycle. So
Oh.
if you have shoe tie, it's more variety, and you can get somewhere faster, and it's more interesting. It adds the spice to life.
That is the
So
spice
are you
to life.
telling me that if you were to just stop halfway through, you wouldn't be walking around your house in socks? You would be walking around your house half barefoot and half like in a shoe.
Well, socks were totally out of the equation. When were socks added in?
Wait, why are you wearing shoes without socks?
Like
What kind of uncivilized person does that?
There are very few shoes you're supposed to wear without socks. You're supposed to wear Uggs without socks, and you're supposed.
What?
No. Ew, then they get all smelly.
Oh, that's
No, but
that's
then,
like just like a petri dish of sweet fed feet sweat.
No, but then like this is the point of Uggs, because then you feel like the fuzziness.
No.
Oh.
They're just supposed to be like tight and secure, and they're supposed to be warming.
Secure.
You're supposed to feel safe. You're supposed to feel
Who are you
safe.
worried is gonna
and
steal your
comforted.
feet?
At home.
Who's gonna steal your feet?
You're supposed to just feel like you're watching your favorite Netflix TV show.
So then put on some socks, not half barefoot and half shoes.
Well, you could always just put on one shoe, tie it, and then leave your other foot with your Uggs.
Well,
and I think that would solve all of our issues here.
Something I would do.
So let's jump right into this. We're talking about standardized testing today. And I think in general, before we get into anything about this conversation, we have to try to just understand, for you, what stresses do standardized tests create for you? Because it seems like, or are there stresses that standardized tests create for you? Victoria, start us off. How do you feel about this?
I definitely think that a lot of students, especially in 8th grade, especially around this time, like with all the stress with like high school applications and everything, and I'm sure everyone's parents puts a lot of stress on them to like get into the right high schools and everything. I do think that adds enough stress to our lives, and I think that even though we have been dealing with these standardized tests since like 3rd grade or something,
Sure.
I do think that they're not exactly as important as other like skills we could be learning. Like how to take a test, that's only going to matter up until like overall 12th grade and then maybe into college for about half the students, because like not everyone decides to go to college. And so like you don't take tests when you're in the workforce.
Not these kind, at least.
Yeah, well, yeah, like you get tested in ways, but no one's gonna sit you down and say, hey, you have to study this and you have to balance your checkbook, but you can't look at any of your income throughout the entire year. You just have to do it from memory. Like
That's
no one's
fantastic.
gonna do that.
Yeah. And you have all these resources, like with that example, that you're able to use, and it's performance-based, is what you're saying, throughout the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's a great point. Madison, where do you feel like stresses lie with standardized testing?
Well, like you said, tests are meant so you can prepare for the rest of your life. And when you're in the rest of your life, why do you need tests? And personally, I think that it depends really what kind of standardized test you're taking, because some do count more than others, and some are just to help prepare you for your future. The CA, although it only counts for 5% of your grade average, it counts for placement for years to come. So
you think do you think that maybe the result of like what it counts for is not necessarily something that's immediate, but down the line?
yes,
Okay.
I do. Even if they say it doesn't count, it's going to help prepare you for like the SAT, because that counts. The PARCC doesn't count, but they're sort of like the same thing. They're just helping you prepare.
Sammi, how are you feeling about this? What stresses do you think that basically standardized testing or create?
I think it doesn't count much towards your grade, but people still worry because the district looks at it and you might not think you're as smart as someone else if like you don't get a 100 or at least like a 90 or something like that.
So how do these stresses affect you guys? Is this something that's kind of isolated, where it's a daily stress, where it's, okay, I have a standardized test today, whether it's, the SAT down the line, or it's PARCC this day, or it's the Common Assessments, for example? Are the stresses things that happen kind of isolated, or do you think that they're long-range stresses?
I think they're kind of long-range stresses for two reasons. One, waiting for the test grades to come back, and two, once you get it, like if you don't get as good as grade as someone else, it's awkward, having to tell your peers that you didn't do so well or something.
Exactly.
And like people can start lying about it. And I think that can be very stressful for some kids.
I think it's fascinating that you just said that there's 3 parts to the stresses, and I don't think as a teacher I ever thought of it like that. There's the pre-planning that causes the stress. There's obviously the actual, when you're taking for the hour and a half, or whatever it may be, stress. And then the part that I guess I never really thought of was the waiting, because Tom Petty said, the waiting is the hardest part. And I guess when you have so much testing, you have so much that has to get graded. You have to wait a while sometimes for it, and I never realized how stressful that could be. Sammy, where do you feel like the stress is like? Do you feel like there's any of those three parts, the before, during, or after, that's most stressful for you?
Well, I think actually before it, because I have to study so hard and I have to like jam it all into my head and everything like that. I mean, the rest of them are all very stressful for me. I feel like the last one is the least stressful because I'm already done with the tests and everything, yeah.
Okay. Victoria, how do you feel about it?
I definitely think that I do agree with what Madison said, and like I do know that like a couple, I won't name any names, but like I do know a couple of my friends have told me that like their parents are already starting to make them study for the SAT, and they're making them take practice SAT tests and stuff like that. And I do know that sometimes I do think a lot of the stress definitely does come from parents, because like they're your guardians and the people you look up to a lot of the time, and so like they're the ones that are pushing you to like do good on the test. They're the ones that are pushing you to like to get like the best, to do the best you can.
So when in doubt, blame your parents.
Well, no, not entirely.
Okay.
But I do think that I don't know how many like parents are going to be listening to this, but like I do think that if they could let up on the stress a little bit, because like I said, like we do have a lot of stress like with our high schools and stuff.
Totally.
And also sometimes they won't like give up on something. They'll say like, say you got like a 1300, but then like your family friend who like your parents talk to every day got like a 1400. Sometimes your parents like won't let that up. They'll say like, oh, your friend got a 1400, why couldn't you? You're just as smart as them, but like you're not as good a test taker.
And let's also make sure we understand this. 1300 is really good too. It's just that comparison then obviously makes it a lot harder. I think that's a very real take on this. Speaking of stress, so I guess if life is full of stresses, then and I know this is not what the tests are designed to do, but doesn't that kind of prepare you in a way for future stresses that you might encounter later on in life, Tori? What do you think?
I don't think so, because I do think, I keep going back to this, I do think that we have enough stress like as is. Like I do think with our regular tests and our regular homework, like that we have on a day-to-day basis, and like with like in the modern day and age with like the social media and with everything else and being caught up with everything, I do think that's enough stress as it is.
Okay. Sammy, is there more stress for you with standardized testing or common assessments, or just tests in general maybe, as a sixth grader, your perspective compared to elementary school?
Yes, I think sixth grade testing is a lot harder than fifth grade or anything in elementary school, because like there's more of them. There's like a test almost like every day. There's a lot of tests in one day, and you have to like study so much, and it's just like gets annoying sometimes.
Sometimes the more stress you're exposed to, and how you handle it obviously, could be really advantageous for you later on in life, because things do continue to get stressful. Or the magnitude, maybe it's less frequent, the stresses that you'll face as we get older, but I think the magnitude and the extreme of some of it gets to be a lot more intense. Madison, what are your thoughts?
I don't know if it's less frequent necessarily. I just think they're different stresses.
Okay.
And even if it's not, like, just like Victoria said, it's not going to be testing when you grow up. It's going to be something else. It's going to be getting an interview for a job. Or it's going to be something else.
And that alone can be incredibly stressful, which, we talked about, like, the pre-planning. So much of the stress that comes along with interviewing for a job, I think sometimes, is just like that preparation that goes into it. Yeah. Well, this is kind of stressing me out a little bit. And I think sometimes the best way to break stresses is to kind of talk about some funny stories. And I know, Victoria, you have had a really funny story.
So when I was in sixth grade, I opted out of the park, and so I brought in, like, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows to read. Spoiler alert, a bunch of characters die in that book. And so my favorite character died in that book, and I got to that part, and it's one of the most emotional deaths in the entire series. And so I'm just sitting there, like, quietly reading in at my desk. And keep in mind, I'm the only one that opted out in my class. So everyone else is taking the park, and then I just start crying in the middle of class. And so I have to just kind of bury my face in my book, and like my teacher's looking at me, all my friends are looking at me, and they're like, "Is she okay?" And then after the test, my friend came up to me and she was like, "What was that about?" And I was like, "My favorite character died."
That's amazing. I almost feel like your teacher would be like, "See, kids, what happens when you opt out of PARCC and standardized testing? It ruins your life." Madison, funny story during standardized testing?
Yeah. When I was in 4th grade, it was like the 2nd year I've ever taken the PARCC. And I was finally getting used to it. And I must have had an allergic reaction to something. I started like cough wheezing. It was sounded like a hiccup and like a wheeze, and I was like, but I wanted to finish the test, and my teacher was like, "Do you need to go to the nurse?" And I'm like, "I'll finish." Everyone was staring at me, and I'm like, I'm sorry. And eventually, my teacher like kicked me out of the room. She said I was like distracting.
Wow, you're like, "No, I must finish this. You will not deny me."
I'm almost done.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and it ruined my like view on the park. Like I'm like, okay, you can't be worse than last year. That's what
I had a student, obviously who will remain nameless, who in the middle of this, it's uncomfortably quiet during testing, and because it wasn't on the computers, because it was NJASC, I think there's a lot less like background noise of like the clicking going on. And in the middle of it, a student sneezed and farted at exactly the same time. Thankfully,
that's the same student or 2 different students?
The same student. Yeah,
no.
It was the same student. I'm very fortunate that it ended there and it did not get worse than a sneeze and a fart at the same time. But obviously, we took it very seriously, the test, not the sneeze and the fart. And we were concerned about bursting out into laughter and that causing a distraction. So we actually spent the time, most people with their fists over their mouth, just trying incredibly hard not to start laughing. Hey, listen, these things happen. Unfortunately, they happen at the same time. So maybe in looking at, we talk about a little bit with PARCC, but maybe if we kind of just focus it a little bit toward common assessments in general. So, or maybe we kind of keep this in general about standardized testing for that matter. So what value do standardized tests have for you? Madison, is there any value for them for you intrinsically, extrinsically? What are your thoughts?
CAs?
CAs or standardized testing, like PARCC.
Definitely. For CAs especially, because I know they're gonna count for placement. Like I wanted to go to one of the vocational high schools or non-vocational ones. And I wanted to go, and I knew you had to be in high math to go to some of them. And I was trying for years to get into high math, and I couldn't do it. And this year I finally got in, and it was because of my CA grades and because the COGAT grades. The COGAT grades, yeah, but not necessarily my CA grades. The COGAT grades, because it's just a different type of test than I was ever taking. And it took me like years to cope with it. So yeah, I took the EOY for 7th grade last year to see if I could go, and I got above 90, so that's how I got in. So still, I was never able to meet the COGAT grade. However, I was given another opportunity, and that was really nice.
Gotcha, I follow you. Victoria, is there value in this for you? In any way, shape, or form?
I really don't think so, because like, kind of piggybacking off of what Madison said, I do think that it really, like, she said that the reason she couldn't get in was because of her like COGAT and CA grades, and I think that's because like that's what they base it off of. If they just completely get rid of those, they could base it off of something else. They could base it off your regular test grades and like how you do in class, which should be what they're based off of. And I really don't think that like CAs and like the stress of the testing really have any positive effect on students.
Okay, and we'll come back to, you said something in there that I think we should come back to too, about using other forms of assessment and what those would even look like. Sammi, is there any value for you, or how large is that value? How little is that value?
Like for my EOI,
Sure.
in 3rd grade I had like all straight A's, like mostly 100s, and then like one test I did pretty bad on, and that was the test that held me back from high math.
Okay.
And
Was this like a standard based test?
yeah, EOI. Yeah.
Okay.
End of year test.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so then I tried to get in, and I tried to get in, and I got in 4th grade because they gave me another standardized test, and I passed that. So standardized tests really do count, and that's really stressful.
And I think you bring up a great point. So I guess a common trend that we're seeing, and I know that a lot of students that I've worked with throughout the years have kind of felt the same way. You're doing great on all the stuff you're doing on a day-to-day basis. And then you said you're getting hundreds throughout the year. And then you have this one test, and that's the thing that holds you back. Is there fairness in that?
No.
You're all shaking your heads
No,
like
not at all.
vehemently no.
Yeah.
I guess, and I kind of look at it as like, this is a horrible video game analogy, but it's like you're going through the level and you're beating all of like the secondary guys. I'm thinking like Turtles in Time with the foot soldiers. Yeah, I'm dating myself right there. And you're doing all this, and then you get to the boss, and then you lose to the boss.
Yes.
Is that a natural progression? Is that a part of how things work, or is school not a video game? Is that a terrible analogy that's just not how things should work? Victoria?
I kind of agree with the second part of it. Like, I don't, like, school isn't really like a video game. Like, that's made, like, video games are made to be at least somewhat unfair so that you go back and you get as many hours out of it as possible. School doesn't want you to go back over a level. They don't want
No, we definitely don't want you to do that.
Like, leave, get out. Go into the real world.
So, like, the fact that I guess these tests are 5%, like, does that, I keep wondering, because there was a time where the common assessments specifically were counted as a part of a test category. So for ELA, it was a part of a 40% bucket, for lack of a better term. And depending if you had 4 tests and that was your 4th test, your common assessment's 10%. If you have 2, you'll do some math. Obviously, the weight then becomes a lot more, but then from teacher to teacher, the weight isn't consistent, which defeats the whole purpose of that first word, that it's common. So I think that they try to make it its own category, which then had its own weight, being 5%. So it doesn't count for much. I mean, it's essentially like a homework. Does that make it easier, less stressful? And you were talking about fairness. Does it make it more fair?
I do think that, like, the way that they changed it from what it used to be does make it a little bit more fair, but I also don't think, this is more about, like, tests in general,
Yeah.
But, like, I do think that, like, I'm going to steal a quote for a second, that there are, like,
Totally.
100 different ways to be smart, and, like, school only tests about, like, 2 or 3 of them. And then there's all the different ways to be, like, oh, like, I can look at a piece of music and play it almost immediately.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can walk through a crazy maze and then find my way back out, like, in a little while. Like,
Why are you going into crazy mazes?
I don't know. But, like,
What do you do?
I
Is
don't
this
know.
like The Shining?
Yes, no, I'm trying to think of, like, random, like, things that you could, like, be really good at that school has absolutely no effect on. That, like, but
Getting
then,
out of a maze when a guy with an axe is chasing you.
Yeah, and also twins.
Yeah. Yes, creepy twins. Yeah, obviously you're not going to learn about that in math class.
Exactly. But I do think that, like, I'm gonna go more towards, like, self-esteem a little bit too, because
Yeah,
I do
that's
think,
important.
Yeah, like, I do think that the fact that the way that school tests only 1 or 2 ways to be smart, it makes some students feel almost less than, as
Okay.
if, like, oh, well, I only got a 73 on this test. I mean, well, like, everyone else in the class got, like, an 85 or above. I'm not as good as everyone else. I'm not as smart as everyone else. And that's not true. And that's because, like, you might be, like, smart in, like, 100 other different ways. You're just not a good test taker, or you're not good at that specific subject. But then, I'm going to go into a little bit more personal really for, like, 2 seconds. That, like, something that really annoys me about the way that, like, our system is just set up is that, kids aren't forced to take, like, creative and art classes for 12 years. And if you're not good at those things, then everyone just says, oh, it's fine, not everyone has a knack for those things. But then creative kids are forced to take 12 years and probably more if they decide to go to college, classes of math and science. But then if they're not good at it, if they're not good at math and science, then they're taught that, oh, you're not studying hard enough, you're not trying hard enough.
That's an amazing point. We measure, or I guess schools maybe in general, right? We measure one style of learning, and if you're not good at it, well, then you're not good at it. And then you associate that self-worth, the 73 that you said, obviously, and that has such a negative impact on on your ability to do anything moving forward. And I think that's so important. Madison, what are your thoughts on this? Is the 5% too much, not enough? Is that a fair trade-off?
Well, I think it's sort of unfair. Because they do tell you that it's 5%. What they don't tell you is it counts for some stuff, other stuff.
Something greater.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think, like, I didn't know that it counted for honor science until a couple years ago. And they don't tell you that. So I thought it was sort of unfair.
Just to kind of put this out there, and it's going to totally sound like teacher talk. If you're this kind of person that's going to put everything you have into something because you know that anything you do is a reflection of your ability and your care, should that matter then if it's 5% or if it's 15%, or if you know that it's going to be something that they're going to use later on down the line for placement, if the expectation is, well, you should be doing well on everything? Sammy, what are your thoughts?
I would personally do well. Not like do well.
But the effort, right?
Yeah, I would personally like give my 100%. Like, I would try to do well, of course. Just like give my 100%, even if it didn't really count, even if it was only like 1% of your grade.
Okay.
I would still give my 100%, and I'm sure a lot of people would too.
Yeah, I think there's a fair point to that. I mean, I do think, though, I kind of wonder if you know the consequence of something. Sometimes I think we're maybe a little bit more cautious, right? Like if I knew that if I accidentally closed out a tab on my Chromebook, I would get an electrical shock, I'm going to be a lot more careful with closing out tabs as opposed to just how I normally do it now.
What's wrong with your Chromebook?
There's a lot of issues with it. I need to go to Mr. O'Leary about it, I think. And I mentioned teacher talk, or sounding like a teacher, sounding like an old person. I know my generation, we did it and we're fine. Like, we're not stressed. I remember, like, what's changed, because you guys represent the student and the teenagers of, today. That sounds so politician-like. But like, there was no widespread talk when my parents or our parents in our generation had standardized tests and finals and about the injustices and emotional scarring of students. It's not something that my parents really, maybe this is more of an indictment on my parents. They weren't up in arms about the fact that I was taking tests. And I went to this school district. So, I mean, and I guess in general, I'm wondering what changed. And I know my parents' parents were not really concerned about if my parents were stressed during school. It was something you were just expected to do, and it will help prepare you for balancing your checkbook, right? And the stresses that will come with that. Victoria, like, we did it. We're fine.
I do think it does have to do with the fact that, I don't want to say back then.
Oh, you're going to say back then. Go ahead, say back then.
Okay, when you were younger.
When I walked to school both both ways uphill in the
Yes.
snow and the rain and the 100-degree heat on the same
all
day.
At the same time.
Yeah.
When you were younger, I do think that all the stress was still there. So for as long as people have been going to school, I think that the stress has always been there.
That's why I have no hair.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I just think kids my age and like teenagers recently have just been much more outspoken about it, and like we're finally beating the stigma about like mental health and stuff like that. And so we're finally talking about that stuff. And I think that that's why it seems like, oh, why is this only just now popping up? Like, it's always been there. It's just people are only just now starting to talk about it.
And I think probably adults maybe didn't care as much about it or didn't think it was as big of a deal. Such a fantastic point. Madison, do you think, I mean, is it just a me generation thing, or is Victoria bringing up great points?
I think there's kind of like a trust issue between the parents in the school.
Okay.
And the kids in the school. And
in general, right?
In general.
Okay.
Because I think years ago, there was parents just sent their kids to school, expected them to come out smart. And now
like a factory.
People are
like
looking...
an easy bake oven.
So your
People
kids
are-
go in, and then they come out smart.
Yeah.
I love it. That sounds awesome.
But now, I feel like parents are looking more into it and thinking, well, are they really making them? Is this really necessary? Is this my child really have to go through this stress? Is it really important? And that's why I think there's so much drama.
I think that's so introspective too, that like we're, with what you just said and what Victoria had said too about just like being more aware. I think society in general, we are just a much more aware society, and we want to know like what's going on. I mean, that's why you're listening to this podcast. You want to know what's going on inside of 3 students' minds, because I'm sure you 3 are not the only ones that are feeling this way. I think that's really an awesome point. The only concern I guess I have with all of this that I keep going back to is, I go back to my own personal story, right? Because I can only talk for myself. When we moved from Brooklyn to New Jersey, Marlboro Public Schools were ranked very highly then, and they still are right now. And the way my parents, and I'm sure a lot of parents, make informed decisions about what schools to go to is if they look at, I'm sure one of the things is test scores, and that could be indicative of how prepared those students are. If, you talked about like the factory idea, they go in and they come out geniuses ready. Well, if they're producing a lot of geniuses, well, then they must be a good school. It's kind of like the college athletes aspect or college schools. Well, if that program produces a lot of professionals, well, then it must be a really good program to go to. How then do parents then, how do they then measure the success of a school when making informed decisions about where to move? Because I know that was such a huge part of my parents' decision when moving to Marlboro.
Well, I think it is, like when you're looking at a school, it is very difficult to see, because we all have different tests. We all have, like, personally, my mom, she works in an East Brunswick school district. And instead of CAs, she has midterms. And every midterm day, there's like a half day. So I think that if there's a midterm, it's a lot more to remember. It's a lot more to study. And
because you have 4 of them.
yeah,
Right?
there's,
Okay.
yeah, there's a midterm and a final, and that's it. And I think there could be more stress because it's like stuff you would learn all the way at the beginning of the year. And the stress and stuff could cause students to do worse or better.
And that you think that they have less shots to do well on it, that would
Yes.
cause more? Wow, okay. I guess I'm thinking that, you got me thinking with the idea of like they have half days for midterms. I'm wondering just like for PARCC, standardized tests, common assessments, would that make it easier? Maybe easier isn't the best word. Would that, since we're talking about the topic of stress, would that make it more manageable stress-wise if you came in knowing you had 2 common assessments and then it was a half a day, you came in, done, and then you go home? Or same thing with PARCC, if it was, you come in, you take PARCC, half day, and then you go home, as opposed to you come in, you do PARCC for 2 hours or whatever it may be, and then now you're back to regular education.
I think that if you go home, there's less of a chance of you overthinking it and double guessing yourself, or what is it?
Second guessing yourself. I like double guessing.
Okay.
I think that's good.
Because you're going home with a bus, and unless you have like a twin or something, you don't really have a peer to talk to.
Okay.
And I think peers can create a lot of stress. Like, oh my gosh, me and Stacy chose C.
Stacy is always choosing C.
Oh my gosh, me and Stacy chose C, and Julia chose D.
Typical
And,
Julia.
Yeah, and word gets around to Julia, and Julia's like in tears now, and she's like, "Why did I choose D?"
And D wasn't even an option. It was an open-ended response. So yeah, that could totally cause stresses. So you're saying get them home after they take it. Don't keep students here, and maybe it would be less stressful because there's less they're doing as far as using brain power.
Yes, and I'm also a student, so I want a half day whenever possible.
Yeah,
So-
totally. Okay. What do you think, Sammy? You think that'd be easier?
Yeah, I think that if you have a half day, you can just go home and relax after like a long day of just like testing.
It'll be half a long day.
Yeah. And
A long mental day?
yeah, pretty
Okay.
much, yes.
I agree with Madison, and I agree with what both Madison and Sammy said. But I also
Not
think
Stacy, not Julia.
No.
Yeah, their answer choice is Julia, Stacy. If you're listening out there, listen. C and D definitely were not the right answers. There's probably some poor students named Julia and Stacy right now who are second guessing themselves because they share a class with one of you.
No, they're double guessing.
Oh, they're double guessing.
Double guessing.
They're double guessing because they shared a class with one of you at some point. They're like, "Oh no, I totally messed up," and we're sorry for the stresses that we may have caused for you.
Sorry, Julia.
Sorry, Stacy.
Yes.
But I do also think that, I do think that once we take the PARCC, I do think that the rest of the day should be a little bit of a freebie, because I do know that, we do have to stay in school for at least 180 days. But I do also think that, this is kind of a little note towards, teachers, kind of, because I do know that, some kids would get, super annoyed, and even I would get, super annoyed when we would have the PARCC or a CA or something, and then like the teachers would have us also have like a project due on that day. But then we would like love the teachers who said, all right, you had PARCC today? Today we're watching a movie, or today we're just playing a game or something like that.
Just being understanding that it's taking it. Do you feel like that there's like a balance then where it's like, listen, as a student, if you want me to take this seriously and you want me to, like Sammi said, and I'm sure is a belief for a lot of people, if you want me to do everything I can to do as well as I possibly can on this, just because that's who I am, then give me a little bit of a mental break when I see you later for our regularly scheduled class.
Yeah.
Is that a fair point?
Yeah, because like Sammi said before, like it does take a lot of like energy and a lot of mental energy to like sit down and like take the test. And like, because it's testing like everything that you've learned throughout like the entire year.
Yeah.
And I know that like last year, in like 7th grade, I do know that a lot of like the kids who were like in high math had to actually take the regular 7th grade test instead of, so that's like taking a test on what you learned pretty much almost 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And that was insanely annoying because you don't remember like anything that you learned 2 years ago.
Right. Or at least not to the level that you feel like it would be like a representation of your actual ability, which is what this whole thing is about, right? We're trying to figure out if there are ways to make this, or if there are ways to measure actual ability. Are SATs okay, Madison?
I mean, I think here in Marlboro, we kind of have an unfair advantage because we have standardized tests like the PARCC and like CAs, and some places they don't have anything like that. So I think the PARCC and the CAs are definitely preparation for the SATs when it really counts.
The more exposure you get to something, just the more comfortable. I think the more comfortable you get with it.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that like SATs, like I think it depends on what the school is. Like I do know that Rutgers University has like a million different schools within it. Like there's the biomedical school, there's the Mason Gross School of the Arts, and there's like a million different other things. And so I do think the SATs maybe should count for the science schools and the medical schools.
Okay.
But then like I don't really think the SAT should count for, say, the Mason Gross School, because like that's all arts. That goes back to what I said about how like, oh, like you could look at a piece of sheet music and play it immediately. Like that's what they should base that off of, not the fact that you can solve quadratic equations, because that's not gonna, like, if you do follow through with that and then you become an entertainer, you're not gonna need to solve like insane math problems
unless that's your act.
Well,
right, you're like the singing musician who in the middle of your performance is just like, watch this. And I mean, there are schools though that actually don't even use SATs. There are things like flexible colleges, like NYU. Just for example, like NYU, one of the things they require out of the following, just one of them: SAT score, ACT, 3 SAT subject test scores, 3 AP exam scores. So if you were in AP classes in high school, you could essentially, to get in, provide them, instead of your SAT, instead of the ACT, you could provide them with 3 AP exam courses. And then there's things like test blind. There's actually one school, the one, Hampshire College in Amherst, Massachusetts, that
They're the happiest kids in the world.
the happiest kids in the world reside at that school. They actually don't want you to send any test scores. They're like, listen, you send me test scores and you're not in. Maybe that's not the case, but they actually say that if you get a 1600 on your SAT, that will not guarantee you admittance. So don't even bother sending it. They try to use other various ways of measurement, and I think it's kind of awesome. It's kind of cool. And as we're wrapping up here, I think the thing to kind of keep in mind, I read something on Twitter. Monty Sire, who's a great educational follower, or follow on Twitter, he posted this a couple of days ago, and kind of a sucker for this because it really got me thinking. He said, quote, "I wonder how many of our kids will wear the final label of their summative exams today." They were taking finals that day. What if the label's wrong? And Victoria, I'm kind of interrupting the quote, but Victoria, you mentioned that 73 not being representative of your ability in general. And he goes on to say, what if it's right, but they think it's final? And that they went on to finish with the idea, and he says that endings matter. And I think that that's so true, because you're always evolving, you're always getting better, you always have that opportunity for growth. And this got me thinking just about CAs and PARCC being like the final assessment. You mentioned like it's measuring something you've done for the whole year, and maybe how dangerous that is to put so much weight on it, or maybe how dangerous that is not putting enough weight on it, or just maybe the danger of just not understanding that things aren't final, that we're constantly growing and that we're constantly evolving. and that there is no finality to learning. You're always going to have the opportunity to get better. And maybe it won't be in that class, maybe it won't be in that actual, on that assessment, but you're still going to be able to use that skill moving forward at some point.
In addition, I once heard this quote. It was like, everything is fine in the end. If it's not fine, it's not the end.
I love it.
And I feel like that's like just like what you said, because we're always growing, we're always evolving, and if you got bad grade in your vocab test, well, it's not. There's gonna be more tests. There's gonna be, if you got a bad grade in your CA, like there's like 12 more in middle school or something.
Maybe we just reword the phrasing of that. There will be more tests. Okay, maybe not on that unit, maybe not on that particular skill, but there'll always be more opportunities for you to grow in that area. And what counts more, on the test or when you're doing it in real life? I think we all agree it's in real life, right?
Yeah,
We've been saying that this whole time. So you'll be able to apply it maybe when it really counts. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. And an enormous thank you for Madison, Sammi, and Victoria for taking part in this episode today. We would not have been able to do this without you. And thank you so much for being a part of it. As we go forward, you'll be able to re-experience old episodes on anchor.fm. It's going to be housing every episode we have ever created. Also, if you're looking forward to getting on an episode in the future, just come down and see me. I'm in room 152. Talk to me about what topic you'd be interested in discussing, with what friends you'd want to be on this with, and we'll make it happen. That is the entire goal. There are no limits. There are no censors. There's no holds barred with this. We want to be able to get any student who wants to be a part of this. We want to be able to get you on this podcast so that you can experience the Monarch Experience.